Hey friends. Okay, so this is another quick log review. Um, we're gonna look at Hellbrect, who uh, is a warrior in my guild, and he came to me with some questions and wanted to compare his warrior logs to mine. So we're gonna do that really quick and just take a look and see if there's anything obvious he can improve on. And we're also going to be guided by the questions that he came to me with, which was, first off, he asked, when should I use haste potions on lust or on execute, and also should I be using my CDs on lust or on execute? And as a warrior, this is a good question and a pretty common question, and the answer is it depends. It depends on when you're receiving lust, and you'll see many, if you go through, any of the top parsing warriors, they're all getting double lust. And when you're getting double lust on a fight that's short, like Rage or Terran, or most of Hyjal, those warriors are only going to get one use of Death Wish in, and maybe even if it's a 2 minute or less fight, only one use of Haste Potion in. So what they're going to do is wait for that. They get lusted right at the beginning, right? And then that second lust comes in for the end, and that's when they'll use their CDs, and that can be misleading because from a random warrior in a semi-hardcore or dad guild, you're looking at that and you're like, oh, I should use my cooldowns on during the end of the fight, during execute phase, when that's certainly not the case for most of us. If you're only getting one lust, you want to make sure your cooldowns are during that lust. It's super important because Death Wish is a flat damage increase. You want to absolutely just maximize your output during those windows. So when you get lusted at the beginning of the fight, if you're only getting one lust, it's, lust happens, you haste potion, if you're an orc, you bloodthirst, or sorry, what is it called? It's bloodthirst, right? Am I having a stroke? Is there two things named Bloodthirst? Oh, Blood Fury, sorry. If you're an orc, so you haste potion, Bloodlust happens, you drums, you Blood Fury, you haste potion, you recklessness, and you push as much as you can during that cooldown window. And the only time you would do that later in the fight is if you're getting a second lust during execute phase, or maybe your only lust is during execute phase. I don't know maybe your guild's doing something different. Because you're getting that flat damage increase, technically the execute phase is more efficient, but for damage, in terms of spending your rage on GCD, but it's always better with one lust to just rip everything right at the start. Okay, so now on a more basic level, we can look at some general warrior improvements. I like to see one thing. So again, we usually talk about this, but when you're comparing yourself to others, it's important to keep in mind lusts, like we talked about already, and kill times. Looks like on your best log with a 90, your kill time was 156. On my best log, I have a 135, so that's a big difference. I'm also a bit better geared than you, so it's another thing to keep in mind, but there's still things to be learned here, and you're not all that far behind. So the place to go, I find, is usually to casts. Whenever I look at a warrior log, I always look to see how close they are to 9 bloodthirsts per minute, because that's perfect, right? It's a 6-second cooldown, and theoretically you could get 10, but because you're frequently not bloodthirsting on CD during execute phase, that gets distorted a bit, and you really want to be towards 9. This looks like a little bit low for me. This is my log. I was at 8.2. That's still fine. You can go through and sort by bloodthirst, and as long as it makes sense here, I lost some time like sundering and waiting for the boss to get into position here before, so I didn't rip threat. But you can see these are 12 seconds, 18 seconds, 25 seconds, so I've missed a little bit there. I missed a second there. 31, 37, and as long as for most of your fight it looks like they're 6 seconds apart, you're doing great. The only time you'll find gaps is at the end. So we can go take a look at your CPM. You're at 7.2, so that is a whole cast less than me per minute, so that's something to look at. We can see how you're bloodthirsting. To me, this immediately looks like, for some reason too, Warcraft logs doesn't track execute very well, so you can't see execute casts, but to me this looks like another common warrior mistake, which is during execute phase, all you do is hit execute, which is not the best way to get the most out of your rage. Generally, you can sim this, and most warrior sims will show what your highest DPR is on your abilities based on your gear, and DPR is damage per rage. So each move, based on what your gear set is, will have a certain amount of damage it offers per rage point you're spending on it, because that's pretty easily calculable because they all have flat rage costs. And generally, Whirlwind is highest. At least it definitely was last phase. I should DPR myself for this phase. I haven't actually done it yet. But Bloodthirst is right up there. Whirlwind and Bloodthirst are significantly higher than Execute. Execute is not very good DPR. It's amazing. The power of Execute is that it gives you something to do when you have 12 Rage and an empty GCD. That's not Heroic Strike. It is more powerful than that. So you do want to fill, and it's important to note, you don't want to miss a global cooldown in Execute phase. So it's fun. The fun part of Warrior, a fun part for me, is you kind of have to get a feel for your rage, how much rage you're getting, and you want to be, if you find yourself at 70 rage, the boss is at 15%, you're always hitting Bloodthirst or Whirlwind before you'd hit Execute. You always want to. And then it's a fun game of, how much rage am I going to have? Is it correct? My global cooldown's ticking down. Am I going to Execute here, or am I going to Bloodthirst here? And, you can kind of track, but you want to be, if you have enough rage for Bloodthirst, you're always Bloodthirsting. Doesn't matter what time it is during the fight. If you have rage for Whirlwind, you're always Whirlwinding. Doesn't matter what time it is in the fight. You do not want to Execute when you have 65 rage, 80 rage, 40 rage even. It's just a waste of rage compared to damage that you could be getting from your better DPR abilities. So that's a good lesson to learn. And there's I do see some little things like you should be sundering. Even if your guild is running a rogue and they're exposing, it's still worth it to get some sunders out in the beginning. So you should work out, make sure you tag your other warrior buddy in and be like, hey, we got to make sure we spend our first, 2 GCDs sundering, and then we can switch off who does the third sunder or whatever. Super valuable, better, more damage for you individually and more damage for your raid, so totally worth doing. Yeah, I think it's a good place to start. I would recommend, I've changed my weak auras so that when Bloodthirst and Whirlwind are coming off of cooldown, they give me an audio cue so that I know, because I'm often raid leading, so it's hard for me to be cognizant of everything, but I hear the drum bang or the little alarm ding, and I know that it's time to Bloodthirst and Whirlwind, so something to look into and consider doing for yourself. But we'll wrap this up really quick. This has probably already been pretty long, but I just like talking about warrior stuff. So to readdress your questions quick, your questions were, when do I use my CDs? Haste Pots, Lust, Haste Pots and Death Wish on Lust or on Execute. The answer is on Lust, but if you're getting a Lust during Execute, you're absolutely doing it then. It's more powerful for warriors during Execute phase, and if you're getting a Lust then, you're really maximizing your damage. But if you have one Lust and it's happening at the beginning of the fight, like most players do, you want to use your CDs then. You want to stack it all and make the most out of your Death Wish window. And then try to get that Bloodthirst DPR up at least to 8 and as close to 9 as we can. And yeah, don't over Heroic Strike. I think it looked like you were doing your damage breakdown. Some warriors you'll see they have Heroic Strike over melee, and that's only correct in, well, I won't say it that way. Sometimes that's a good indicator that they're over Heroic Striking if you see that their Bloodthirsts and Whirlwinds are low, but it doesn't look like you're doing that, so looks like maybe you're just a victim to too many Executes. So yeah, otherwise looks good. Good luck, have fun.